this because, I mean, there's only so much you can say about strokes, but so that's the second slide. Okay. Yeah, I've actually seen this deck really. Oh, righty. All right. So this is like kind of the cheat sheet. So this is going to kind of go in weird order, but I'm just going to start with, so globally, this is what we're looking at when we're talking about strokes. Now you see language of cerebral vascular disease. That is not the same per se as CVA. Cerebral vascular disease, think of it as the umbrella. CVA is one of the things under the umbrella of cerebral vascular disease. So because of the fact that you had a CVA, you had some type of cerebral vascular disease. All right, so cerebral vascular disease is not the exact same thing as CVA. The CVA is accident, cerebral vascular accident. Something went oops, right? So these I-69 codes, which we know are our stroke codes, they're combination codes, right? They include both the residual condition. Because of this accident, what did it leave behind, right? Your residual condition and the specific cause of that sequela, that residual condition. And we have all these categories. Now, when we are coding stroke, you should be thinking you're in that I-69.3 category, which says sequela of cerebral infarction. That's another word you really want to get tucked into your brain, infarction. And it's also the code for sequela of stroke, not otherwise specified. The other I-69s are for some other type of cerebral vascular disease, such as your non-traumatic subarachnoid hemorrhages, your non-traumatic intracerebral or intracranial hemorrhages. Now, a reminder, they keep saying non-traumatic because if your documentation is saying that they had a traumatic subarachnoid, intracranial, or anything like that, that's an injury. That's a whole completely different chapter. That is not an accident. That's an injury. And then you have the I-69.8 sequela of other cerebral vascular diseases where it's not specified as something else. It just says cerebral vascular disease and like, can't call that a stroke. All right, it's some other cerebral vascular disease. And then finally, that I-69.9 sequela of unspecified cerebral vascular disease. Don't use it. All right, so cerebral vascular disease. Just showed that's those I-60 through I-63 codes. We don't usually use those because what they represent is there's a continued, so unresolved cerebral bleed. That is usually not still going on when someone is released to the home. We're usually dealing now with the residual condition, right? Something's been resolved, they send them home. We get them, we're into those residual conditions. But we do see that unicorn time to time where there's still something ongoing. It is okay to use those I-60 through I-63 codes if it indicates that it is still an acute ongoing condition. They're still being treated for that bleed that is still occurring. So what is the CVA? Right, we love to shorthand and abbreviate everything. I love watching those medical commercials on TV where they'll talk about blah, blah, blah condition, also known as, PTD. And I'm like, no one calls it that, but, they try and abbreviate everything. And I'm like, no one calls it that. Just this commercial calls it that. And it's funny, but we do abbreviate a lot, right? So CVA is a cerebral vascular accident. It's also known as an infarct. It's not from a head injury, which has been caused by someone else, like they skied into a tree or they got hit with a baseball bat or anything like that. It's an internal process of something gone wrong. Generally, a bleed or a thrombus or an embolism, something went wrong internally. In home health, when we code that stroke, we don't typically code, right, the initial event. We code what the patient is exhibiting because of that event. What are they left with? And what do we call that? That fancy word, sequela, right? Something is resolved, but it left behind an issue. So, I always like to say when I'm talking sequela, code what you see followed by what caused it to be. Now, we don't know, though, that the stroke codes are pretty much combination codes. It has the residual condition and its cause in the one code. So, for example, one of our, tried and true, the I-69 352s. hemiplegia and hemiparesis following cerebral infarction affecting the left dominant side. So the cerebral infarction is what caused it to be. What do we see? We see the hemiplegia of the left dominant side. So that's your whole sequela, code all wrapped up into one combination code. Dominance, just a reminder about dominance. If you look through the H&P, you look through the clinician assessments, always read the clinician assessments. OT is pretty much going to be on target as far as calling out dominance. Because that's one of those things, they always, find what's dominant because it has to do a lot with feeding and their self-care. PT might have a 75 to 80% chance of getting that dominance. Nursing, good luck finding dominance. That's just historically the way it always, works out there. But read them. If you cannot find it in the actual H&P, because you might not, or you might see a side, just verify, look through the narratives and the evaluations from the therapies or anyone else that's in there and see if you can't find that dominance specifically called out there. So you're either coding the right side or the incorrect side. And of course, dominance is not always an issue. It is when we're talking monoplegia or hemiplegias, but not all stroke things have dominance issues like dysphagia. You have a problem swallowing. Has nothing to do with right side or left side. And of course, per the coding guidelines, we are permitted to assign codes to laterality from clinician assessments. This again is part of that cheat sheet, just your categories of your CVA. So, you have your unspecified, then you have your cognitive, speech and language, your mono, your hemiplegias, other paralytic syndrome. I think in my whole career, I've coded that once. And then that catch-all term, which actually encompasses a lot, is that 0.39, other sequela of your cerebral infarct. So the easiest missed, coming from that last one, this other group has your dysphasias, your apraxias, your facial weakness, your ataxias, other things like alteration of sensation. You might see that in the H&P and not realize that that goes with your stroke. And there's actually a code for that. So alteration of sensation, disturbance of vision. Now, that's if when you're seeing that disturbance of vision, the H&P, and they are attributing it to the CVA. If they just say the patient has low vision and they have a stroke, listed somewhere else, that does not mean automatically that that vision problem is associated with that stroke. You have to have that doctor make that link. Muscle weakness, pseudobulbar effect. And with that muscle weakness, it has to say muscle weakness in your H&P. Generalized weakness, fatigue, weak, those terms don't fly. It's going to be muscle weakness to come under this code here. So, I put here, thanks for the cheat sheet. We all appreciate cheat sheets, but, it's still good to know how to look something up to find those codes. So I said, okay, let's try and be a coder here. First, we'll always start with the alpha, right? You look up accident, sure, right? Because you're not going to look up cerebrovascular. You're always going to say you look up accident. So if I look up accident, we have cerebrovascular, right? No doubt I'm pointing to my screen over here, which you can't see. So I'll say, look, we have cerebrovascular. That doesn't work either. I-63.9. And we know I-63.9. We can only use it if it's still ongoing active. And you verify that, you go to the tabular. It basically says you don't belong here if you're talking about residual conditions, move along. Okay, that didn't work. Back to the beginning. Let's look up infarction. So again, that word infarction, that's the one that's going to save your butt in trying to find stroke codes if you can't find your cheat sheet. Right? So I looked up infarction, and here's what, obviously this is screen printed out of the coding center. We have infarction, the plus sign, you can blow it up. We have stroke, meaning cerebral infarction, code to infarction cerebral. Well, we know what happened with that. We've done that already. It got us to the I-63.9, which that's a dead end. And then we have sequela infarction. All right, so we have lots of things here. Let's take a look at them. That if we expand the infarct up on top, and it's really funny because I'm watching the transcript going along as I'm talking, and you obviously know what's happening, what it's looking like when I say infarct. Okay, so that's just a humor for the day. Think about that. What Siri or whoever, Alexa or whoever is doing the transcribing is actually thinking I'm saying. So when we look at the infarction, we actually find I60 3.9 and dead end. If we expand the stroke, tells us to go to infarction cerebral, been there, done that, dead end, I60 3.9. So that last one, again, sequela, great word to remember when we're talking about strokes. And infarction, again, great word to remember. So if we go to the sequela to the infarction, now we look that up and we expand on that. And as you can see on the right-hand side, that's all our near and dear to us stroke codes there. So you know you're in the right place, everything hit right, because what we're talking about when we are coding in home health and hospice, we're coding the sequela of the situation. Now, of course, what if there are no deficits? We can't use a code for an active condition if there are no deficits. If there's nothing left behind, they went in the hospital, they had a TIA, whatever, and there were no deficits, or if they had maybe aphasia when they were first admitted, and by the time they were discharged, the aphasia has resolved and they're talking normally again, then they had a TIA and they have no residual deficits. And that's what we have to use is that TIA code, that Z8673, which does not belong to any clinical groups or even a comorbidity group, so can never be primary. And it basically just says, hey, they had an event, they're okay now. Right? That's basically just what a TIA is. They had an event, they're okay now. We're going to keep an eye on it. Maybe now they have a new medication, they're taking a daily aspirin or something, whatever caused that TIA, they've got to look into that. Now, the other TIA code is your active TIA code, which is your G45.9. Not typically coded in home health, but again, we're going to get those unicorns where every now and then we'll see it's an ongoing unresolved issue where, again, there's really no residuals going on. They just keep throwing these little TIAs and they happen, they resolve, there's nothing left over, and then they happen again. So that's where you can use that G45.9 code. Again, that's your unicorn. You know, don't hang your hat on that code. That documentation is really have to be screaming out that that's going on. That's not a typical situation. So with coding strokes, again, you know, when you make sure you always read everything when you're in the tabular, looking up your codes, you know, because you coded the stroke, is anything else required to also be there because you coded the stroke? And it does have the use additional code convention to code to identify the presence of any of these things. You know, hypertension is always going to be in there, the tobacco dependence, all the smoking issue, because all these conditions can line up to cause things to the body metabolically, which could potentially bring on the stroke condition or what caused the stroke to be. So you always make sure that you look down to the use additional codes, see if there's anything else. Because of this, make sure you're definitely including these if it's appropriate for your patient. All righty. So that was stroke really quick in a nutshell. I'm going to stop the sharing of the screen. All right. So any questions on that? Heather's shaking her head yes.
I do, because you know I'm coding weak. I've had cases like where, what do you do if you have like a doctor who has said TIA with confusion, with continued confusion, but they won't give it that stroke. They won't give it that this patient has had a stroke, but they keep on saying, just like you had said, that they had TIAs. I've seen that before. It's been a long time, of course, but I've seen that before. So in that case, would you just use that G code for the TIAs if they're saying they're having multiple ones that is compounding their confusion?
And you've already queried back saying, you
yes.
know, so,
yes.
Yeah, I'd be like, first, you know, I'd be really trying to push to see, you know, can this, you know, be called a stroke? And then, you know, go into those, you know, altered consciousness codes there for a stroke condition. Otherwise, if he's saying, the TAAs are ongoing and the confusion is related to that, then I'd be, unfortunately, stick that G45.9 code and then your confusion codes.
Yeah, especially like if the patient already has dementia, for instance, and it has made that dementia actually worsen as that patient is having more and more TIAs.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, anytime you have, TIAs, that's, either stopping blood flow or something, that's definitely going to make any mental issue worse. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Anybody else? All good?
All good.
All good.
It was good.
All righty. I tried to keep it short and sweet. I know sometimes I go way over, so I figure I'll give you some time back here. Like I said, there's not a lot to say about strokes, but just however many the patient, all the conditions the patient has, all the residuals, you've got to get them all in there. They're obviously not all going to be, stacked at the top of your coding list, because only one of them is really going to be, typically only one of them is the reason why you're out there, and it's usually the hemiormonoplegias, right? You'll get your dysphasias up there. Those are usually real important to bring in multidiscipline cases as well. And, all the other stuff, get the rest of their medical conditions in, and then, later on, then start stacking the rest of the residuals, the rest of that sequela. But you want to be sure you get that nice variety of cases in there also, just to be sure that you're not leaving something out and perhaps missing out on comorbidity adjustments. How do we get that symmetry shirt? Heather, they want to know where you got that symmetry shirt from.
I got it from the symmetry store, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's got
so
a name.
soft.
I don't remember it, but it's a symmetry store. We've got a store.
I got the hat too.
Yeah, it's got the hat too. Yeah, but there is
I'm
a symmetry store.
It's super soft.
Someone knows the name, but I can't think of it. It's been over a year since I've been in it.
I don't remember it either. We'll have to find the link and share it.
Yeah. HR should know. HR better know. Yeah.
Yep.
I promoed? Really?
Do what now?
I promo? Does that sound familiar to anybody? mybrightsites.com. I don't remember any of that, but that's okay. I don't remember much anymore. Like I said, I wasn't even aware that last month was April, not March, like I was thinking, but it's been a long April. Okay. All right. So I believe Heather's got the next course in June.
Yep, I do. It's on discharge.
Bless you with, I don't know, but it'll be something Oasis or something related, but it won't be coding.
Discharge and value-based purchasing. More on that.
All righty. Well, everyone take care, and I'm still around, still peppering you guys with information, so have no fear.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone have a good day.
Too.
All right. Bye-bye.